It's the SDG Podcast. Before we get started, you can check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com/podcast or find us on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Solution Design Group. Welcome, gentlemen, to another podcast. We have Peter Lawrence.
Hi there.
And joining us for the first time is Tom Cross.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, welcome. Thanks for being here on short notice. And I'm Kyle Bacher, and today we're going to talk about SaaS. We're going to SaaS about SaaS. Software as a service. Capital S, little a, capital S.
Yeah.
That's important. We are totally dependent on SaaS. There's no avoiding it now. Would you agree?
Yeah, I don't think you can get away from SaaS, not for anything. I mean, maybe if you stay 100% floss, free Libre, open source, you might be able to do it, but you're still probably going to have a cloud somewhere that's SaaSing you.
Well, and you're going to get pulled into it. People send you stuff and it's in their SaaS and they have to go there. Use it. Also with small, medium businesses that can't normally afford a whole bunch of apps and IT people and servers and stuff like that. All these tools are in reach now. At least you hope they are.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the smaller you are, though, it's like the worst you get because of the licensing tiers. So it's like, yeah, we can afford it, but we can afford the most basic. And this fifth tier enterprise level, you have to call us for a price nonsense. That's like a Fortune 500 company. That's big, big dollar, big company stuff. So I think it affects different size companies differently and different industries differently, but we're all using it. We're all using our favorite online whiteboard app or our favorite online Kanban board or our favorite online office suite or our least favorite.
I was going to say, you make it sound like we're using our favorites here, Kyle, and I'm not so sure that I'm using my favorite of all of those things. I'm using those things, but
I feel somewhat responsible for being on Microsoft 365.
Did you do this to us?
Yeah.
I mean, were you responsible for getting us switched over?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, you did the work. You did the migration.
Mm-hmm.
But I was the one that said, hey, we really need to do this since we're going to be partners. And if we want to do an intranet and have it be cool, or as cool as we could make it first time around, not knowing much about user experience design, that was kind of the birth of that. And then, you're kind of in this stuff. Some of these things you get so dependent on and so intertwined with, it's a trap.
I think that's true, Kyle, both on sort of more the tooling level and then even kind of on the wider platform level. That's a difficulty of even talking about SaaS, right? We can talk about your whiteboard app, which is such a sort of standalone tool in your practice or your team's practice, or you could be talking about Salesforce, right? Or SAP, right? Or something that's really existing at more of a system or platform level. And again, small business, large business, even those modalities, right? I think that adopting SaaS as a tool has a high likelihood of success because your expectations are somewhat narrow. When you're talking about SaaS as a platform, I think it can get much more variable in terms of implementation, as we all know, as people have been in this industry a long time. And I think that is because what that SaaS provides, what the needs of your business are, that can be so much more complicated, right? So, and as a developer, I have a very different reaction to working with SaaS as a tool than I have to working with SaaS as a platform, right? One of those is great, and I'm asking for it all the time. The other one has a lot of complexity.
Yeah. And that's, we're building this quilt of SaaS apps that we need to stitch together. Integrates and whatnot. And it's not always a clear path. There's not always a widget. They don't always play well together. Those are challenges. We use Nintex moving data around.
Right.
We're not connecting Salesforce directly to Microsoft 365, but Nintex is grabbing title and, a lot of that profile data that we keep in the one system as our source of truth and pulling it over to our other system so we can benefit from it. Robert's People Game would not be what it is if we didn't have that integration happening.
I mean, your profile would be a lot different if I wrote it, that's for sure, than than the official one that we pull from the sources that we have.
So I've been going through a what do I want to call it?
Accumulation phase or
A cleanup, cost saving, cleanup, cost
spring
reduction, spring cleaning,
yeah,
doging, whatever you want to call it.
Doge. The biggest company I ever worked at called this rationalization, which I think was it's just it's classy, but also does make it sound like something's going to stop getting funded.
I like that rationalization.
But
you need to.
It's a fight, though,
to do that, though, right? Because in the old days, you would have more of a physical hardware thing, right? And a server might age out and be so old that it's not supported anymore, so I need to get rid of it.
Out of support.
Right. But software as a service should never go out of support, right?
Well, that was the dream, is no more major version changes. It's incremental upgrades, little fixes here and there, but we're not going to do SharePoint 2010, 2013, 2016, and have to do migration after migration. We're just going to go cloud. Guess what? As soon as Microsoft had to support their own stuff, they got a little better at it. And they locked some stuff down, like keeping people out of trouble. Yeah. So the cleanup, though, you got to pay for this stuff. So you set up your pricing, and you don't want to have to remember to do it all the time if you know you're going to be using it for a while. So sometimes you'll set up these auto renews,
right?
And then that's when you get some nice surprises at the end of the year. And oh wait, we are using half of this. Like, we should do something about it. So interestingly enough, I figured this out. Minnesota passed a law that went into effect January 1st. If you have auto renew, you have to send out a notification within 15 days of that auto renewal date. And you also have to provide a clear path to cancellation. So,
and that's
actually benefited us in one case.
And that's not just business wise, that's personal as well. Is that, or
I think it's software. I think it's
okay.
Yeah. It's not for leasing your car. But that should be. It should warn you several times. There was a quote from the Microsoft CEO.
Satya Nadella.
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I thought I had it up here. I was going to read it, but basically he was saying that agents are kind of going to be the future. And agents kind of watch what you do and see what they can automate, and then they'll kind of take over some of those tasks, some of those automation tasks.
So Clippy's coming back
Clippy is coming back.
Many things.
But he's got power this time. He can do things. So this idea is not new. Nintex had a product called robotic process automation.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And that would run locally. We haven't tested it yet because I got rid of our, what was that server that did our network, Active Directory? Yeah, I shut down all the servers in our rack, and then RPA required Active Directory, and I had to run local. So it was one of those things that got kicked down the road until it was gone. So I never played with it to see. But you really have to be the kind of worker and doing the kind of work that is that repetitive in order to benefit from that stuff, don't you think?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, that kind of is one of the, I don't know, cornerstones, or maybe the shiny off in the distance for me as a developer is get rid of my mundane tasks. Do the mundane. I'll do the hard stuff. I'll do the fun stuff. Enjoy the mundane as much as, I used to. Never, ever, ever, ever.
Who do you trust to write your status report and put your time in?
Oh, status report. I got to write that down. Hold on. Generate my status report. I'm so on that. These are going to be the best status reports I've ever written.
You could do them in the style of William Shakespeare.
I could do them in the style of things that I actually accomplished and turned into status report, which is, some of us know, is not exactly our strongest strength.
So, Tom, what's your what clubs do you have in your bag in terms of SaaS apps that you like to use?
Good question. I really like lately. I think the last SaaS type tool that I personally bought and liked a lot. It's a tool called Tailscale, which is and that's tail like an animal's tail, and then scale like a weighing scale, right? All one word. Tailscale is sort of a network VPN appliance as a service in a way. It's an agent that can live on all of your PCs, anything you have remotely resembling a home lab. Excuse me, edit time. So anything resembling a home lab. And the idea is that all of those agents can form a VPN on a private network, fully encrypt, and you don't really have to do a lot of port forwarding or router configuring or TCP/IP. Obviously, if you are in that home lab setup, you are going to have to open your firewalls and etc., of course. But it is very, very good at just magically and privately uniting all of your devices, right? So if you've got all of your music digitized on some home server, any device is going to be able to integrate with that really seamlessly over a VPN anywhere where you have Wi-Fi. Whereas before, you might think, oh, I need some firewall product, or I need some really sophisticated approach to home networking so that I can connect to my intranet on the road. Obviously, you could set up just a straight up VPN on your own, right? Instead to just install a bunch of Tailscale agents, say, hey, you go figure all this out. It's fantastic, super fun.
That sounds amazing because yeah, you could secure shell into your, home network from out far away and connect to it, but maybe your music app doesn't respect that as much as everything else. And and if having Tailscale do all that work for you, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's
incredible.
It's really neat tech, and like all things, right? If you're super nerdy about this, like me, you're wiring your house from Cat 5e to Cat 6a, and you're installing 10 gigabit networking and things like that. And so again, I think, but Tailscale is enough of a silver bullet for that 95 set of use cases where it's like, oh my gosh, I could just install this on my iPhone, and that's
sold.
it. That's it. That's all I have to do. So it's neat tech.
I have a Ubiquiti Dream Machine.
Okay, yeah.
It's got a couple PoE switches.
Nice.
I'm going to use for some cameras, and it's going to be hooked up to my new fiber.
Nice.
I miss the truck that digs the hole to your house from the street by like a week, and now I have to wait till spring because the ground is too frozen.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna get shovels. Come on, you guys can dig through that frost.
It's small picks.
So, so are you saying I just have to like configure that normally on the network, and then I can use this other tool and it'll create that VPN so I can get into my network and then do all of the stuff?
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
That's pretty cool.
Yes.
It's really cool.
So is SaaS apps like streaming services where, we spend nickels and dimes, and then at the end of the day, we're spending big dollars because it all adds up?
I mean, it's a different model, right? And companies are going to that partly because everybody's doing it. So why not jump on board, right? In the old days, you'd buy a copy of Microsoft Word and you'd install it on your computer and you'd have it, right?
Right.
Microsoft wouldn't come to your house and uninstall it, rip it out of the, off your computer, or somehow disable it. Then, eventually there are those softwares that have that, or Nagware, or whatever you want to. But now you just use Office in the cloud, right? And just use Word online, and it just works as long as you have an account. And yeah, the reality is that those things are going to be a little bit more expensive over time, but they're cheaper in the short term. I mean, you used to pay $600 for Office.
And now with the subscription model, over the same period of time, you get to pay $6,000.
No,
maybe
I don't
not
know
that much.
I don't know that I would say that, because like to get the basic Office suite for a home user right now is $100 a year. So that's 6 years, and you get infinite upgrades.
Yep.
Right? You're always running the latest and greatest, which is wonderful.
That's true.
You don't have to worry about does this version, does this document open with this version of Word that I have installed or not? Right? That's not a problem that we've had for 15 years.
Yeah, it's not even like something I even think about it anymore.
Right.
But that's the constant upgrades we don't have to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Along with that come changes and new features and things like that that are really difficult to keep up with because it's happening constantly across all of these things. And all of a sudden my cheese moved again. And why isn't that button showing where it used to? Oh, you have to expand it and pin it and then go do this and that, or go turn something on. That's the biggest challenge. I get most of my calls are on Tuesday and maybe Wednesday, because that's when the updates
Is that update
roll.
Tuesday?
Update Tuesday, yeah. And it's sometimes one reboot it doesn't do it. Did you turn it off and on and off and on again? So Tom, you use that one for home. What else you got in your bag of tricks?
Let's see. That was my main example that I had that I thought was interesting. What else do I use? It's funny. All I can keep thinking is that my home subscriptions need to be rationalized probably soon, right? Just that aspect on SaaS that it is easy to add when it's these smaller charges. It's easy to lose track of. And so, like I said, I think as a topic, this is wholly relatable. Most of my other SaaS is AI. That I think is adding the most value to me now, both as a student and as a user. But pros and cons of that are probably 10 other episodes, right?
Or one presentation at the big event next week. Which do you use? ChatGPT, Claude AI?
I at one point kind of made the mistake that I'm sure many people have had of feeling like the one. I think at the time it was ChatGPT was not serving an area of inquiry particularly well, and then I got hooked on Claude AI, and that contrast is even useful, right? Not just one LLM, but using them together, running skepticism of one answer against another, right? It's almost that meta crawler type of strategy that we had before Google was just everything, right? Like, instead of having to pick from one, let's just cut across. I think Claude's a better counselor. I think ChatGPT knows Azure better. Does not totally surprise me because Microsoft is a big ChatGPT advisor. But again, it's the tech is interesting, but I actually find for me more that kind of prompt engineering, social hacking, figuring out how to be a user of AI, how to structure my questions, who I trust for what. That's what really fascinates me about the space, not as much the, how the LLM functions.
No, I think that's a good point. I found I use ChatGPT for most everything. I have had Claude AI and I kind of turn it off and on. I go in different stages, but I found Claude AI to be overly flattering. I had to tell it to tone it down. That's a great answer. You did a really nice job asking that question. That's amazing.
What a
question was like,
you bet.
yeah. Give me the formatting for this column in SharePoint. That's a great thing you're doing right now. You're a good boy. So I'm like, okay, that's enough.
People really
but you're
like
right. It is a more social experience on Claude, and I think Claude does a better job of like emulating a human and speaking. But ChatGPT is great for tech support. I'll use it for, it's like the user could have used it. I'm their ChatGPT. So they go to Kyle GPT and then I want to just give them quick instructions. So a lot of times I'll just ask, it'll kick them out and I'll just paste them in and here you go. So that's made my job faster. And I think that's important, that those tools are also
100%. Honestly, I will say that SaaS has made things a lot easier and a lot more, especially as a consultant, when I'm traveling between clients, having everyone have the latest and greatest of everything really helps out sort of my experience, because I don't have to remember that Jira added this 2 years ago, but this client's still using 4-year-old Jira running locally or something like that. Most places have gone to the SaaS approach because it's just far easier to have someone else maintain that software for you, and that server, and that infrastructure, and that network, and that, so many things. You just have to pay for a browser and a connection, and you're up to speed.
And I will say that's true in many cases for the specialized tool set type stuff.
Oh, yeah.
With the larger platforms, Salesforce and MS365, there's a lot on the company. Like, those big platforms will take you so far, but then you have to, if you want a true backup that's off-site, you got to figure that out. If you want a really, really high secure score,
right,
you got to figure that out. There's stuff changing all the time. And they try new things like, hey, we're going to push out a conditional access policy that forces your users to use MFA. And I'm like, I already did that like 3 years ago, so I don't need you to do that. Well, we're going to do it anyway. That's fine, I guess.
I mean,
all
a lot
those
of changes around security are the world is driving all of that, right?
Right. And you still have to deal with it. And then account management and license management, all that kind of stuff goes along with it. So like a big part of my job is, I would call, instead of systems administration, it's service management.
Nice.
And I didn't coin that term, but I will steal it. It's me. I did it. It's it can be a full-time job. Some of these platforms are huge. So it's SaaS within SaaS within SaaS, and then internal integration between stuff. Microsoft is its own quilt, and a lot of synchronization happens between the different platforms to make it all fit together. So your user profiles, well, that's in a user profile store, and that's a different search than your regular content search, and on different schedules. And there's also profile stuff that gets stored in other things like Graph and Delve for a while. I think that's changed, but yeah. So keeping up with all that stuff is tricky. And so SaaS doesn't completely let you off the hook in terms of having IT people involved.
No. You still need that whole team.
Yeah.
They're just going to be doing different things, but you need that whole team at least.
But the stuff that they'll be working on, other than the configuration, security, account management, administration piece of it, the stuff they'll be working on is like higher value targets than the stuff they used to be burdened with.
They won't be physically lifting hardware into a rack and plugging it in.
Right.
That's not really a job that exists at a lot of companies anymore.
They will be looking at their phone at 9 o'clock at night and seeing that it's Microsoft calling to work the ticket. Like, no, I'm not answering. I'm not at work. Hello. So, do you remember kind of when SaaS began, Tom?
Oh boy, I probably do. I'm trying to think from in my line of work. I was in data warehousing. That was for a while. That was really on-prem for the most part. Of course, data was my line earlier in my career, and so that was one of the kind of last kettles of fish maybe to really take going off-prem seriously.
Yeah, people held their data close to the chest and wanted to keep it internal for as long as possible, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. And even well into the 2010s, that may have been a standard pattern, like again, an on-prem data warehouse, an on-prem Hadoop cluster, things of that nature. And again, I think it was really, again, as later and later you got into the 2010s, I think that started getting adopted a little less. I think that was maybe for me when that final push to, okay, we're going to make our peace with pushing this into the cloud. And then you get adoption of Snowflake, which seems to be going into a huge fragmented part of IT and eating everybody's lunch, which is itself a cool SaaS story. Of course, because again, I think Snowflake is again not another SaaS that I would say I use personally, but an interesting example of a SaaS that seems to have been broadly implemented fairly well. I mean, again, Snowflake adoption seems really strong from the fellow practitioners that I work with. I don't get a lot of like, we tried to use Snowflake and couldn't make it work.
Yeah.
Not a common refrain, that I hear.
No, for sure. I'm trying to think like what the first real SaaS that I saw sneak in.
EverQuest.
Well, and I'm thinking like Gmail, maybe the Google Office suite. That was, I don't even remember how many years ago that was when that started up. That started to take over some things. Adobe licensing changed pretty dramatically almost overnight.
Oh, they went in a hurry. They realized that, quick nickels were much better than slow dimes.
And I think that made a change. That was a market that wanted to stay on the bleeding edge as much as possible, right? And so this helped them keep those people, instead of using your 18-year-old I'm trying to think of the Adobe product that, like the drawing product that a lot of people used, and it would just be like somebody had this ancient version of, Illustrator or whatever that they'd been using forever, and then that's all kind of gone out the window these days. And, the Office suite has been one of those that has moved to the cloud pretty successfully.
Yeah.
I know, Kyle, I've watched you use Outlook online instead of firing up a local copy of Outlook. I do the same thing
I hardly ever use the desktop app. And the new version of the desktop app that is shipping with Windows 11 is Outlook Online. It's just in its own little app frame. But I think it does have tighter integration with your PC. So it's a little easier to do some things. But I look at, there's a huge upside. There's an upside to like specialization. Microsoft does everything, but it's the Swiss Army knife. So it's not the best knife. It's not the best server. That's not a toothpick. It's plastic and it bent within 2 seconds. But it has all that stuff. I can open a wine bottle. I just might have to take a few tries at it and shove the cork down in the wine and stuff. But a specialized tool like a Figma or FigJam or Miro, just for whiteboarding. It's all you're doing. A lot of that stuff that we do could totally work, is totally possible in the Microsoft suite.
Sure.
So it's got Planner, but it's not the specialized version that you fell in love with.
Well, and those tools spun up specifically for the SaaS environment, right? Like they specifically are cloud-based and run on the internet in a browser, and that's their feature. Here's whiteboarding, but in a browser for everybody, and so it kind of makes a big difference there. I was just thinking that one of the big cloud or SaaS things that I got into was Dropbox. It was one of those, hey, have your files everywhere. And then it became more of a, hey, pay to have your files everywhere. and those things happen.
Well,
they got to support their services.
The first hook is the free version, and then the trial for the paid one. And then you forget to cancel it, and so now you're in it, using it, and you might get hooked on it, and then you're in. That's it. And then their price increases happen. Sometimes their whole licensing structure changes, and your plan is no longer a plan they support.
It sounds like you're describing streaming services here, Kyle.
Yeah.
But also
it's all the same.
It's all very similar, isn't it?
It's all coming through that packet hose. Those packets flying through the air. That's the downside, though, is you are you're vulnerable.
You're giving up control to you give up that control so that provider can give you more features than you might otherwise get, more service than you might otherwise provide. Can you imagine, Kyle, if you had to spin up every single server for the SaaS that SDG uses and maintain that server in-house? No, you can't even imagine it. right?
I go back to selling mobile homes down in Texas, like the old days. No, you're going to have a staff of IT people, and for a very small company or a medium company that acts like a very small company,
Right.
you just don't have the bandwidth. Security is a big concern. And it's like, well, I could do security, or Microsoft could do security. Who's got more at stake?
Who's got more experience doing security?
Yeah, who's got more people? I'm under their umbrella. There's certain things I need to do to be as secure as I possibly can. And on top of the security alerts and investigations, but they have really cool tools that do that.
Right.
But you have to learn that stuff and devote a lot of time to it to get that finally tuned up. And then when you do, it changes.
Go ahead, Tom.
Oh, thanks, Peter. I think for me, what's interesting here is cloud, I think, does security pretty well. All of the cloud vendors talk about a shared accountability model, right? They kind of use that same language. And I mean, a benefit of that against what you're saying, Kyle, is we all need to know a lot about security in 2025, but at least that shared accountability, right? That might take that solution space and have it, right? Because now I don't necessarily have to worry about every single dimension of security, right? That was like that shared accountability concept, because again, it is enforcing that you do need to be accountable for your half of the street, right? But you really do have a good partner to collaborate with on that big space.
You don't have to shop and find your own authenticator app and install the infrastructure for all of that. It's just there.
Yeah, that's right.
Unless you have to lock down laptops with MFA.
That sounds a little too personal there, Kyle.
I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
So the downside is sometimes you get in a position where you're not in agreement with your SaaS provider. And, they're going to do a price hike, or they're going to take away a feature or change something that you've been using forever. And you find yourself in a position of negotiation, or just, this isn't going to work for us. The tech people there to accommodate you. There's a point where you have to consider moving to a different SaaS provider.
Right.
And Peter, you did the migration from Google to Microsoft 365. Yep. You did the migration from our old sales app to Salesforce.
And the one before that, yeah.
Was that fun for you to do?
Well, let's just say that I wouldn't wish that on my best friend, for sure. And we're talking about it like you're leaving this SaaS thing as though it's something unique to SaaS, and it's really not. If you were on SQL Server in the past, you could always move to a different SQL database, but not a lot of people went SQL Server to Oracle or SQL Server to MySQL or MySQL, bopping around between these three different software vendors or anything like that. It was possible. Technically, it just was very painful. And you're talking about the pain of moving from one SaaS to another, and data portability, I think, has helped with that a little bit. Some of the laws around that, but it's still work. You still have to move that data, and it's not free. Every SaaS vendor tries to do their best job to make tooling to move from their competitor to them, right?
Right.
And always the best possible is to stay with where you are, right?
Yeah. Sometimes you got to move, though. Sometimes you hit a wall and you just got to move. And sometimes you bluff because you're trying to get a extra price, whatever. But yeah, I don't believe in bluffing.
And sometimes they call your bluff, and then you get to move.
Yeah. And you're like, oh man, I can't lose. That would be bad. But you're right. We switched from Novell to Active Directory.
Right.
And things like that. We switched from Lotus Notes to SharePoint. So it's like all the same things we were kind of dealing with before, we're dealing with now, but in a different way. and without the infrastructure concerns and without the upgrade concerns.
Right.
Tom, what are your thoughts on the dark sides of SaaS?
Well, I think you're exactly right, Kyle, that the more you are needing to drive the SaaS partner for features, the harder that's going to be, right? I think there's always a kind of optimism that you'll be able to shape your SaaS partner the way you need them to be. But again, for those really big contracts, those stakes can be really high, right? If you get that wrong. It's funny, on the one hand, that this dark side of SaaS is, again, your partner owns a set of functionality, and the more you're not comfortable operating in that system, the harder of a time you're going to have. Compare that to our previous conversation about learn through doing, right? These SaaSes that kind of give you that free sample or free trial and then become that infection vector. Yeah, in my experience, the dark side of SaaS is you can kind of think of yourself as losing either way, right? Where you're either saving this money up front or you kind of get hooked on it over time and now you can't live without it. But I will say, I think the dark side is kind of that anti-agile, big deal, big bet. I'm going to be able to shape the vendor. Hey, I got a $24 million contract instead of a $27 million contract. Getting obsessed with that kind of thinking, that's really where I think the dark side to SaaS lies, and the common cold kind of try until you buy mentality, for all its warts, right, at least has proved value. Right. Before that renewal comes.
I found our difficulties come with the people that do things on their own and go out and get a competing product of something that you're already using and have licenses for. And it's like, well, that's the same thing. And we actually have extra licenses for that. But now you're expensing it monthly because it's the one you like the best.
I mean, that's a tale as old as time, right? Trying to have your company bring in your tool for you. Some people are willing to go through the proper channels, and other people just try to end around and sneak attack. I don't want to say sneak attack, but sort of
shadow IT.
Yeah, shadow IT, right? And I mean, there's a term for it because it happens.
And sometimes it takes root and becomes a thing. And now you're on Slack.
Yep.
Even though Yammer was built right in to Microsoft and did a lot of the same stuff, and then Teams came along. So
who of us have lost there?
I don't think we've lost. Anything you're using and benefiting from, I think, is good if the price isn't totally gouging you. One of the other problems is when you get these platforms and people learn they're available, like, oh, can I get that? I want to get that. What you don't want to do is you don't want to tell the whole world that you have that thing now, because everybody's like, oh, I'd like to try that. I'll have some of that.
Would
and then
anybody
they never use
like
it.
A Miro license? Oh, look, 100 hands just shot up in the air. And now you have to use it 5 hours every week, and you have to make sure that you do that. Oh, look, 97 hands just shot down again.
All right. Some of that stuff is better off okay, fine, go the shadow IT route, and then it's on you. You're expensing it. I don't have to worry about it. If it's just you, it's company stuff, and they got their own account, and maybe they're doing work out there that needs to be preserved. And it's like, well, yeah. So you really can't have that situation. It's not good.
No.
And it is difficult to stay on top of stuff. I think that that's one of the key things, is really staying on top of your accounts and the pricing, especially if you're using products that have variable pricing structures that change based on usage. And that can be like, oh, wow, we have AWS, we have Azure, you can flip a switch and spend $1 million. And it's like, that's the fear.
You can run a script and spend $1 million. It's not necessarily flipping a switch, but yeah, you can run a script and spin up $1 million worth of hardware and without hardly working at all.
So easy to just spend that money. So, I mean, I can totally see a position, a consulting position where you just specialize in licensing and cost management across, all SaaS platforms.
Right.
And not just focused on like being a partner with just one of them, but being the person that can come in and go, okay, here's what you got. You got all this going on. This is your total nut you're spending your money on. And this part's not getting used. If you have this database, but if you went to this one, you'd save X amount.
Right.
This stuff doesn't need to be accessed that much. Let's move that into Glacier, the lowest cost AWS storage, stuff like that. And I think we do some of that with the AWS.
Oh yeah, there's a whole program for that.
Yeah. And if you haven't done that, do it. What's it called, Peter?
Don't put me on the spot like that. I don't remember names of things.
Because we don't do it.
We'll find
We're
it
not
for
AWS guys. Yeah.
We'll find it for the notes.
All right, we're getting down to about 5 minutes left, gentlemen. Any parting thoughts before we shut her down?
Yeah, I think for me, I would say again, we've talked about SaaS a lot today. There's a concept in computer science and in life called overloading, right? Which is we're just using one term, overloaded, for a variety of different contexts, if not almost different meanings. For me, it's that same idea where SaaS is a tool set. Is that at least kind of adding value? Is that the right thing, whether you're doing it the right way or not? There's that kind of virtue. And then there are these kind of big blind strategic bets, the big integrations that are ultimately unsuccessful or don't drive enough value. For me, I guess I would say, take that hands-on route. Try before you buy, get your hands in the mix. Don't treat SaaS too on paper, theoretically. What do I think it can do for me? And then just keep an eye on that bill, right? It's funny how much that can be just kind of common sense, good housekeeping. And to your point, Kyle, at some point, you just have to think about job responsibilities. From a company perspective, you can create jobs that can add value, right? By just looking at dimensions of cost optimization, something like that, right? So, that's I guess that would be my takeaway is try before you buy, and then keep an eye on your wallet.
Yeah,
I'll take my shot now. SaaS is here. It's here forever. I think it's going to be in one form or another, right? I've seen the pendulum swing back and forth between client server, mainframe, cloud, data center. All of those things are going to come together, and have. But I think software as a service is here for the long haul. I don't see that going away ever. And like Tom said, take advantage of it and be cognizant of it. It's not free, but it can be less expensive.
And I would say beware of the trials, beware of new. Let the product follow the business need, and not just listening to the brochureware stuff. This is the greatest thing ever.
Yep.
Well, why? And is it great for us? And is it great at the price? What's going to save us? Do your due diligence.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, thanks for being here today. Tom, thanks for showing up last minute and helping out.
Thank you, Kyle.
And I think with that, we can all say goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Solution Design Group is a digital product consultancy in Minneapolis. Check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com or look for us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.